When you dare to share, you break the silence. When you dare to share, you speak your truth. When you dare to share, you use the full strength of your voice. When you dare to share, it brings opportunity to own your story. So tell it, be heard, and at the same time, your sharing is someone else's learning, inspiration, motivation, empowerment, and hope. There's always an element to each of our stories that remains a secret. For some, we feel it's a dirty little secret. Dare to share your untold story exposes these secrets in a welcoming and positive way. I encourage each of you out there to dare yourself to share what is yours to tell. When we dare, it is the courage to do something really important. Let this be a vow to each and every single one of us that we take risk, we brave, confront, and face what is, while inspiring and empowering all communities. So let's break that silence and tap into mental beauty. This is Salima Jagdeep, your podcast host, a practicing social worker, and your mental wellness connoisseur. Welcome to the Dare to Share Your Untold Story podcast, episode number 76, The Destruction of Perfectionism, Parenting, and Divorce. To all my fellow listeners, before we get started, I'm just dropping in a note to give you a heads up that this podcast might be emotionally triggering for you. We do invite guests onto the show who share openly about extremely difficult life moments with exposure and impact of what the struggles have been like. The intensity of each episode could have a variable impact on your emotional and mental well-being based on your own personal story. If at any point the topic becomes uncomfortable or upsetting to you in any way, please do not pressure yourself to listen. Instead, be kind to yourself, do some self-care, and perhaps give another episode a try. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing our courageous and daring guest, Jagdeep. Jagdeep is a holistic health and life coach and Reiki master who is a highly intuitive person working with energy in both her personal and professional life. She works with individuals at all stages of life to connect to their inner child to explore the parent-child relationship. Jagdeep is a true believer that one's childhood is where a lot of one's beliefs and conditioning stem from, and therefore the work she commits to allows connection with one's inner child and become an effective parent and heal childhood wounds while understanding individual behavior. Jagdeep also works with youth and with parents and caregivers in several organizations working different roles. She supports women in their journey to reconnect with their intuition to find their answers from within rather than seeking validation outside of themselves. Well, hello, Jagdeep. Welcome to the Dare to Share Your Untold Story podcast.
Oh, thank you, Salima. I am so thrilled for us to have this conversation, and thank you so much for having me on as a guest.
Oh, great. It's nothing but splendid to have you on as a guest for the show today. You know, I actually hold a lot of gratitude for your willingness to be here today and for you to allow me to unpack your story. For me, it really continues to be a blessing and an honor to be able to chat with guests like you. You all allow me to tap into vulnerability and really draw from your strength and insight and inspiration and really allow that to get shared in this space. So I have a lot of gratitude for that. And it's really important that, you know, we take a stance together to help break barriers of mental stigma.
Absolutely, Salima. Thank you so much for the work that you do. It's so important in the world.
Thank you. And the work you do is also important in the world too. You're making quite the impact there. So Jagdeep, in case you're still wondering, just in case, this podcast is all about bringing forward untold stories that people go through, whether it's directly about a mental health struggle or something else. One thing we know is that no matter what the story is, there is impact on one's own mental health in some way, which remains tucked away. And this platform, it serves in a way to break the barriers of mental stigma that have been conditioned in our society. So today, together, my hopeful mission is that both of us can represent encouragement for people, that we encourage people to share and tell what individuals typically have reservation to express. That is why I continue to bring forward a trend, and it's called the mental beauty rethink. So, Jagdeep, what's the first thoughts that come to mind when you hear that phrase, the mental beauty rethink? Share with me, please.
I will. Thank you. I mean, it makes me smile, Salima, because, I think mental health, mental illness, it just have such a stigma and shame
Mm-hmm.
attached to it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I love the attaching beauty to it is just, it's like a breath of fresh air for me. And it's also empowering to see it as beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
So I absolutely love that question. And I mean, for me, when I refer to something as beauty or beautiful, it just gives me that warm, fuzzy feeling in my heart. So it's very connected to my heart. So to put mental beauty into like a sentence together is just like, oh my gosh, yes.
I love
It's
it.
just so beautiful.
I love it. Oh my gosh, yes, I love that. And I really like, you're the first person, I think. I mean, I could be wrong. I'd have to go back and check this out. But I feel like you're the first person to use the word empowering when describing the beauty aspect, like the fact that we're using the word mental beauty. I always think of it as, being open and invitational,
Right.
so that we have an option to interpret things and take it in differently. But I really like how you went straight for empowering.
Yeah. I mean, for me, when someone, talks about mental health or illness, I feel like they feel helpless or disempowered. So
Mhm,
putting that beauty to it is like,
mhm.
like I said, the beauty piece is just so empowering because when like, it makes me think of flowers. I personally love flowers and they just make me smile.
Oh, that's so great.
Yeah, so when I
Yeah.
thought of like mental beauty, it's like flowers. It makes me feel like happy and just like open and just,
Yeah.
in control rather than feeling helpless and disempowered.
What a fun and rich perspective all at once. Thank you,
Oh, thank
Jagdeep.
you.
That's great. Fun and rich perspective. Amazing. So, Jagdeep, it's time to uncover your story. Are you ready to dive deep with me?
I'm as ready as I'll ever be.
that's that's amazing. Whatever shows up, I'm already curious and eager to start unpacking. So, my words to you are be both brave and bold.
Oh, thank you, Salima.
So here we go, Jagdeep. Give us the newspaper headline of how you would title your untold story. How would it read?
It would read, no longer the victim, she chose to be better, not bitter.
All right, say it one more time, please.
No longer the victim, she chose to be better, not bitter.
No longer the victim. She chose to be better, not bitter. Now that has flavor. Where tell me more about this title. What does it represent for you?
So for me, it is, many times people who do know my story or know me, they've kind of gone straight to the how are you still standing? How are you getting through each day?
Mm,
Um, so I
so that's
think
what
for
you mean
that,
by victim. Like
yes,
they also paint a picture of you as a victim, like poor thing.
absolutely.
I see. And then you were about to say something. I'm sorry, I may have cut you
Oh,
off.
no, that's okay. And I think for myself as well, I had to make those choices to be consciously, it's easy to go into the victim when things are going so wrong.
Hmm.
So making that conscious choice to keep bringing myself back to I can be better or I can be better.
Mm.
So making that daily almost choice of where am I choosing to be?
Conscious choices are so integral for us, and it's great to see that you have, taken the steps to put that into practice. And that is a really intriguing headline. No longer the victim. She chose to be better, not bitter. So the connection between the victim and the bitterness, right?
Yes,
It's very poignant. It's there. It's
it is.
solid. Well, then this is a perfect segue for us to get right into the nitty gritty. So tell us what your untold story is all about, Jagdeep.
So, the three areas that I kind of see it as is like the perfectionism in me. having to have things perfect really was affecting the important areas of my life,
Mm,
parenting for
mhm,
one, just the dynamics between, the perfectionism and how the way I was trying to parent and almost controlling my kids and controlling
mhm,
everything, because I think
mhm,
perfectionism really goes into, I'm going to control everything and then everything will be perfect, but
mm.
that's
So
not
you were
really
like
how
a
it goes.
micromanaging mom.
Right, right,
Okay.
exactly.
Okay.
And then also I'm divorced, so leading into that as well, and just looking at the damage that being a perfectionist did
Mhm,
to close relationships in my life.
mhm,
One being the my partner, and then one being my kids.
mhm.
So yeah, I think that's just the being aware now, looking back at how destructive the perfectionism really was and how it was spilling into the important areas of my life. So instead of micromanaging and controlling, I was actually destroying.
That's a huge theme to continue for us to unpack. And it sounds like there were all these elements, but I can see how they're all like tangled and intertwined, right? And how,
Absolutely.
the dynamics are affected because of the stance from the perfectionism and the narratives and the stories you tell yourself, and what you end up believing, and not
Yeah,
checking out the facts, and kind of living life in that way, especially when you're trying so hard to control things you have no business controlling.
right. Right. And it's exhausting
I'm
mentally
sure it
and
was.
physically,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I'm sure it was.
Yeah.
And so tell me more about this journey in terms of like, so those were all the themes in your journey. And can you tell me a little, or tell us about like give us a like a time frame or a context of like who's involved, or where were you, or what was going on in your life at the time where things were like at its most intense?
Yeah, at its most intense, I would
Yeah.
say, was back in 2013,
Mm-hmm.
when I actually had a mini stroke. So that was almost like my peak,
Mm-hmm.
and even then, I was just like trying to, micromanage and control everything, and
Mm-hmm.
but um, my kids were very young at that point, like very young, and
How old
it
were they
they were
when you had
one
your
and
stroke?
four,
Oh,
one and
one
four
and
at that
four.
time. Yeah,
Super young.
super
Okay.
young. And I think it was a wake up call in so many areas for me, in the
Hmm.
way that I want to be around for my kids,
Yeah.
And the other thing was just, I realized that I was stressing myself out. I was causing myself, not to say it was all me, there were other
Mhm.
elements and parts of life that played parts as well. But um, I played a huge part in it because I was taking on stress and all of this that really, like you said earlier, that we can't control. But,
Right.
if I just do this, then this will happen and blah, blah, blah. But I think my health taking a toll
Hmm.
really was the wake up call in a lot of things. Because then it kind of made me rethink my marriage, which fell apart in 2017. So it's a few years later.
Hmm.
But it was really me going, I can't keep living in this pressure cooker that I have created for myself. And also, just our dynamics at home. It
Hmm.
just felt like that pressure cooker. And I thought, it's impacting my health, my
Hmm.
life, the way I'm parenting, the kind of partner I'm being, just the way I'm showing up.
Right.
And I think a lot of it was we had the picture perfect life on the outside,
Hmm.
and it was getting exhausting living up to that. And I just felt like I just can't anymore.
And what was the thing that happened when you were like, I just can't? Is it, I mean, yes, you had the mini stroke, um, but was there something that was like the true catalyst after you had the stroke that really gave you that, I guess, maybe second wake up call, if you would agree? A second wake up call for
okay, reevaluating this marriage? Was it just the progression of having the wake up call for the mini stroke, or was there like a second wake up call?
There were many, many wake up calls.
Okay.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think for me, it was just like, I'm no longer going to live this way, but also tolerate the things that I've tolerated for so long.
Mm-hmm.
And then also a big thing for me as well is and was, and still is to this point, is as for my parenting, kind of showing my kids, we can show them or we can tell them, but I think what we show them really has more of an impact than what we tell them. So telling them that it's not okay to live in a toxic or be in a toxic relationship, but then continue to be in one is kind of like, well, I'm not really practicing what I preach. And
Right. So what am I modeling for my children?
exactly. And also, it really was important for me and still is for, my son. I do my best for him to know what relationships should be like or how to treat women or how
Mm-hmm.
to even treat his sister as well.
Mm-hmm.
And same for my daughter as well, just to, how are we supposed to be treating one another as humans and
Mm-hmm.
how should we want to treat ourselves? Because if
Mm-hmm.
we're putting ourselves, if I was in a situation where I'm like, oh, don't let another person talk to you this way or treat you this way, and then
Mm-hmm.
them continuing to see it, it was a lot of things. But it all was just kind of like that wake up call was the stroke. And then from there, it's like something needs to change.
Okay.
It's just not working for my health, for the way I want to live, and just for everything. It
Right.
just felt like that was almost the point where I'm like, okay, what
Right.
changes am I going to make?
Right. So then, the mini stroke really was the exact wake up call. And then there was the ripple effect of that wake up call that got you to be even more conscious of and
Absolutely.
bring to
Yeah,
your consciousness, like, okay, there are some things that I have been ignoring, or I haven't been practicing what I'm preaching, or, oh, look, here's something else that's showing up that makes sense differently now that I've shifted my perspective on this, this, and this. So
absolutely.
it's like
Yeah.
that ripple effect of, and now that I'm making these changes, the other ones are just naturally showing up.
Yeah, that's just it. Yes, naturally
Hmm.
showing up and being more aware of them, whereas before
Hmm.
just kind of shutting it down and almost ignoring them, right? Having the
Yeah,
blinders on.
yeah. And I noticed a few moments ago you said, I heard you say how you were like recognizing uh, what your role was in the stress. And I know you said that you caused stress, and I kind of look at it as not so much as a cause and effect, but like there were things that you were contributing to that amplified how stress played out in your world, I think.
Yes.
And so, um, you know, that revelation comes to you when you have your wake up call and you start recognizing your own patterns and recognizing how you can break patterns. So then you start allowing yourself to tap into vulnerability and go, okay, what are some of the things I've been up to? What are
Yeah.
my
Oh my goodness.
autopilot?
Yes.
What are these autopilot choices that I've been making? What's happening here? And
Oh,
it sounds like you kind
absolutely.
of went in and teased out that process for yourself.
Yeah, and it's a constant ongoing journey, right? The
Mhm.
perfectionism, I really have to catch myself and say, this really doesn't matter in the moment. Like,
Mm.
is this important? And just looking at the different things, Salima, if I can share, some of the
Mhm.
things that were important to me
Mhm.
were things like just the rigidness in myself was
Yeah.
like, no one can come over to my house unless the floors are steamed and everything is dusted and everything looks perfect. And those are added pressures. Like, it took the enjoyment out of having people over because it was just more of a stressor than enjoying the moment or who was coming over. It was kind of like a stressful leading up to having a visit with someone. So it kind of defeats the purpose, right?
Yeah.
But looking at it now, in that moment, that was me trying to control the
Mhm.
only thing that I could, which was I can make the house really clean. I can cook the food. I can do all these things that will make me look like a perfect person. Whereas internally, there was just so much chaos for me.
Mhm.
I think because I just felt
Yeah.
so disconnected. I didn't want to be so perfect.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, bless her, but that's my mom. Like, you know, everything had, like, no one could come over unless everything was completely perfect. So
Right.
I took that into my own life. And then when I realized I actually don't want my kids to have to live up to these almost standards, right? Like,
Right.
because I'm living up to my mom's standards, who I don't even live with, but I've
Right.
carried it into my life. And
Yeah.
now I don't want that to be a pattern for my kids. I want them to actually be okay with, you don't have to clean everything if someone's coming over,
Right.
even if they're coming to drop something off at the door. Like, it was
Hmm.
just too much,
Hmm.
you know, the way that I was.
It's interesting, like, what habits that we pick up from how we've been conditioned, how we've been raised, and what gets passed down the line. And even sometimes we do things without questioning it because, well, that's just how our family does it.
Right.
And when you shared that part about, even your mom not living you're not living with your mom, and these things are still habits that you were holding on to. Sometimes it's important to slow down to check out, okay, what is the reason, or what's the drive behind this? What is the purpose of this, right? And until you
Right.
slow down to check it out, you recognize what was truly important. And it reminds me of this story about the turkey. It's so random, but it's like there was this. Someone had told me this story where a child, I guess it was Thanksgiving, was around the corner, and they were talking about preparing turkey and having a family Thanksgiving dinner. And they talked about how, I think he came home from school, and it was to talk about what are the traditions in our family. And it was like, you make a turkey, but you chop off the wings. Basically, it's like you have to keep asking all the elders in the family, and you have to keep backtracking. Well, my aunt did it this way, and my grandma did it this way, and my great grandma, my great great grandma. And so the story went on, basically, how the reason why they chop off the wings is because the original oven back in the day were really small, so the turkey
Right.
couldn't fit the wings. And
Right.
here we
And
continue to chop the wings when the oven has space for wings and so much more. So when we do things blindly or not inquiring about, like, does it make sense anymore, like, for us to do it that way? Or are we just doing that because that's what we're told we're supposed to do?
And I think for me, it was really checking in with myself.
Yeah.
This just feels really disconnected. And I find when I'm doing anything
Hmm.
and it feels disconnected, it just
Hmm.
feels mentally exhausting. So I'm like,
Yeah.
this something just doesn't feel right. Why am I doing this?
Right. And so tell me more about the internal chaos. You spoke, you mentioned and you used the words internal chaos that you were experiencing. Can you describe some of that chaos?
I absolutely can. So I think I was so miserable with my life choices. I felt like I had ticked all the boxes. I did everything right. And why are things still feeling like they're just not working?
Hmm.
So it was a lot of that beating myself up and wanting to rebel, but responsibilities. And so it was like an inner dialogue with myself
Hmm.
with, this is how I want to be, but this is how I have to be. So it was just like a constant, I'm unhappy. I'm unhappy. And I can control a clean house. Maybe that will make me perfect. And but it really had, when I look, it's I did tick all the boxes, but it just went to show me, and still does, that ticking all the boxes is, who are you ticking those boxes for? Because half of those boxes I literally do not care about.
Hmm. Hmm.
So they were, to make the people around me happy, and they were still not happy. So who is the one struggling? Because I seem to be the one miserable right now.
Right. And you can't please everyone, right? That's something
Right.
we hear
Right.
so often from our family, our friends in the helping profession, and
Oh
just
my gosh. Yeah.
just anyone really will tell you, like, you can't please everyone. But somehow we
Yeah.
don't. I guess for you, I mean, I'm obviously, I know I'm guilty of it too. But we do need to hear that reminder of we can't please everyone, and we say it often to people and we hear about it. But we really need to take stock of those three very important words: can't please everyone, and
Exactly.
actually integrate that into our life.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so tell me more about the kinds of destruction that you exhibited when, perfectionism was at its best, doing its thing while you're parenting before divorce? Like, what did that tell me?
Yeah, so it was really the external, like we talk about when what's going on inside, we will kind of spill out, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it was my way of communicating. It was my way of my use of language and just very like definitely not kind and soft and understanding. It was the complete opposite of just the coldness and just not the person I wanted to be. I think whether it was with the parenting or anything, because I was so angry. It was anger coming up, and that anger was coming up from, I'm just so miserable. Like, I'm doing all this. Yeah, I've got everything that looks picture perfect on the outside, but I'm so angry. And where that anger was coming from, I really think was the fighter in me. Like, I just had to, everything felt like a fight, like I have to
Mm-hmm.
fight through this and I have to fight through this, and things are just a struggle. So that was really, I mean, first it was creating that anxiety, because I think the fixer I find in me really comes from that anxiety, right? So the anxiety wants me to kind of fix, fix, fix. But when I'm trying to fix, I'm like getting exhausted. So then the fight's coming up with, oh, I'm just like, I'm the one doing everything. And this is, but I'm only doing everything because this is the way I want it to be. Like, literally, if the garbage gets taken out 20 minutes later,
Mm-hmm.
is it really that big a deal that it has to have a big fight?
Right.
Really? Not really.
Right.
But, it's I want it done now, and that means now. And
Mm-hmm.
that's very like, oh, that would be horrible to be around now that I'm on the other side of it.
Right.
But again, it was externally wanting everyone else to just be the way I want them to be so that I could feel okay.
So really controlling like people and the surroundings and your environment, for people to, operate in the way that you wanted. And so that's where the rigidity comes in. And
Yeah.
then if it didn't turn out that way, it sounds like what you're saying is you were filled with resentment.
Yes. Yeah.
And so
Absolutely.
what did the resentments lead you to do?
A lot of just externally, the yelling, the screaming, the complete opposite of where I am now. I think because now I have that inside, I feel good. That
Mhm.
point, the inside just felt so awful. Um, I mean, I was angry at the world because I chose to marry this person, or I chose the wrong place, and I was far away from my family, and
Right.
it was all the things that were like, right, but you made the choices. So what are you really angry at?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think, like I said, I go back to a lot of it was I felt like if I tick all the boxes, I will have done it right. But seeing that ticking all those boxes still made me an even angrier person that I've ever really been.
Right.
And just then I'm lashing out at everybody around me and I'm angry at them. And oh my gosh, it was just a vicious cycle.
Right. And during this period, during this time of anger and the resentments and all of the mannerisms and behaviors that were showing up for you, did anyone ever confront you on the anger and resentments and how you were showing up in the world or how you were
Oh,
showing
they
up in
really
your
did.
encounters?
Yeah, they
Yeah.
did. And I've had conversations with them now because now they're just like, who are you?
But go back
um,
to before you became who you are now. But like what kinds of things did they confront you with before, or how were they able to confront you? Were you able to receive it?
I was not able to receive it.
Mhm.
No, absolutely not. They would, my sister-in-law, she's great. She would talk to me like she'd come visit, and she's just like, it's not really that big a deal. Like, it's not about the crumbs on the floor. Like, and I would just kind of go off on her. And then my dad would say things. And I think I really pushed people away because I was not able to receive it. Like, I did not take that feedback well. um yeah, I would just lash out at them. So it was just anger coming out in every way, shape, and form possible, honestly.
So it's like people are giving you feedback, and their feedback was triggering you even more because
Even more.
perhaps
Yeah.
you're like, they don't get it. They don't understand why this is important for me. But you probably didn't, I'm assuming, that you might not have done a really great job in actually telling them what you're
Yes.
triggered by, or what's actually going on for you, or why this particular thing is so important for you. It
Yeah.
doesn't
And
sound like you were able to articulate that.
exactly, because, I mean, the message I was giving was coming from anger again. And I think, again, when I look at it now, because my dad would always say, if you said that in a nicer way,
Mm-hmm.
people would actually listen. And I was like, yeah, but but I'm angry.
Right.
so so
So
then
did you
it's
stick with like, I have the right to be angry and you people don't
exactly.
get me and no one understands what I'm saying, and this, like, so it was like, it's hard for people to even want to take you seriously or to really be open
Exactly.
to listen, because the moment you're opening your mouth, they're just like, oh, that anger.
Here we go
It's,
again.
oh, it's that anger thing that she's doing. So it's like they've already categorized it and like you're being dismissed probably.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And another thing I will share, if I may.
Yes, go ahead.
Um, it really was, there was a lot of things going on behind closed doors in our marriage. And because my anger was the one that was being seen, the other things were almost like getting covered, because it's like, oh, she's just always angry. That's why this is happening. And she's just this. And I was so angry because I'm like, no, it's not just me. And it's not, what we're portraying. But because my anger was the more dominating thing, it was almost like, an out for my partner to go, hey, she's just always angry. You guys know she's always angry, right?
Right.
So it was almost like it was all turning on me, it felt like, because my anger was taking over. So no one was taking any of the serious stuff serious, because it's like, here she goes again. She's just being her.
And that's where you feel dismissed probably, and then that just fueled your
Absolutely.
anger for another round or another cycle, or maybe you would by that point withdraw, and maybe that's when you would start internalizing some of your experiences.
Absolutely. And I will share that the other thing that really changed in that was seeing that then show up in my kids, because they were
Mm,
then doing the same thing.
you're noticing it.
So
It's
yeah,
like,
and it's
okay.
like when we say to someone, stop yelling, and you're yelling, right? It doesn't work.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So that was a wake up call for me as well, going, okay, so now my kids are mirroring me,
Yes.
and oh my goodness, this is not okay.
Hmm. It's interesting what lessons we get from the mirror, right?
Oh my gosh.
And when you really truly allow yourself to look in the mirror and see what
Yeah.
what's actually showing up, not what you want to see, but like
Oh, of course.
the mirror work is so essential. Having gone through this journey through perfectionism and going through your divorce and all the chaos in between, um, what else can you tell us about emotional pain that you experienced? Is there anything else that you think is important to share from an emotional pain perspective?
Yeah, I think I mean, I was at the point in my life where I just thought, you know what, I just can't do this anymore. But it was not anything on the outside. Like, that inner pain got so, it was almost like it was just so much pain on the inside that I couldn't handle the pain. It was so depleting that I physically felt exhausted, but I could
Mm-hmm.
have physically not done even a thing that day. But
Mm-hmm.
my thoughts and what was going on inside was the mental exhaustion was showing up in physical exhaustion. Because I just was at a point, it was 2018, I believe, where I just thought, you know what, I can't go on. I just can't do this. The pressures of everything are too much. And this was after my separation, where it just felt like now I'm separated. Now I got again what I wanted, but I'm still not happy. So what is
Mm-hmm.
it? It's just me. I'm the problem. And I had a lot of anxiety attacks and in and out of the hospital, and just it was awful.
Mm-hmm.
And I just was at that point where, you know what, I'm done. I just cannot. I give up. You know what? Whatever happens, happens. I am just done with my life. And I kind of had that moment where I thought, what am I giving up? What do I want to run away from?
Right.
And I think it was so many, I mean, so many things happened, but I think that one really sticks out for me because it was just that moment of, I am done. I can no longer do any of this. But
Yeah.
I didn't know what I was done with. I
Right.
felt I'm just done with myself and the exhaustion I'm creating because,
It's almost like you had a light bulb moment in a way. It might have been in a dark way, but it's
yes,
like it was something that helped you with that final shift, or like that missing puzzle piece to like really anchor you to position yourself the way you were trying to do, because it's
it
like,
was. And there was,
2013, when you say, okay, 2013, that I had a mini stroke and different, that was a wake up call in itself. And then you actually enter the journey of working on your process
yeah.
and peering inwards. There's still work to be done, right? So 2018, you said, so 5 years
So
later.
so
Yeah.
2018, I can remember that moment. It was, it was like 2 o'clock in the morning. I went to go to the bathroom and I literally fell on the ground. And
Oh my.
I was away from my phone and I couldn't, there was no way. Normally, like I was in and out of the hospital with, like I mentioned, like with the anxiety attacks. That moment, I was like, I can't breathe. I can't get to my phone. I can't even call an ambulance at this
Mm-hmm.
time.
Mm-hmm.
That was a complete surrender moment.
Mm-hmm.
Like if there's
Yes.
ever one, where I just thought, you know what? I need to work on whatever's going on inside. The chakras came to me, right? I had been to counseling for a while, and one of my counselors had mentioned the chakras. And I was like, ignored it at that time. And I don't know how at 2 a.m. that came to me then.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't tell you what happened. It was almost like a blackout moment between then and when I got to the end of that day. But I somehow got up and, got myself together, whatever. I really couldn't tell you how. But that day, I spent 6 hours reading up on chakras. What are these chakras? What do they do? And
Mm-hmm.
I just thought, okay, you know what? It was my journey into kind of where I am now, but it
Mm-hmm.
was the most beautiful journey because I really started working on myself daily from that day, and I still do. And
Mm-hmm.
it's really got me to where outside things still haven't changed in many ways in my life, but
Right.
I internally is what's changed. And that's
Right.
what's kind of made me go, oh my gosh, I was the problem all along. Not
Well,
completely, but you know what
yeah.
I mean,
Well,
right?
it sounds like you worked yourself from the inside out.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Yes.
So, Jagdeep, when people come to see me for therapy, people, they tend to be in one of three places in a way where some people are getting started, some are in the middle, or some are looking back. And what I mean by this is, like, some people are coming with like all of these different parts of things and they're trying to make sense of it. Some are in the middle, meaning they've worked on some things, or there's an acute stressor that they're in the middle of addressing. And some are looking back, like they want to move on in their life, or they want to grow personally and become more intentional and reflective in their process, or close a chapter, or get some sort of closure in some way. So, for you, what part of the journey would you say that you're in with regards to your untold story? Would you say that you are getting started, in the middle, or looking back?
Definitely, I would say looking back for sure. I mean, there's always work to be done, but
Yeah.
definitely looking back.
And so, what do you want to remember about the process of your healing journey if you can see that you're looking back?
Gosh, I want to say, you know what? I've definitely gotten through every single day, no matter how easy or hard it's been. Just looking back and knowing I can do hard things. I am doing hard things, like honestly.
I like that reminder. It's such a powerful one. I can say it again. I can do hard things, and
I can do hard things and I am, because I think
I
when we're
am.
in that mess, it feels like I am never going to make it. I'm not going to make it through the next hour.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
remember feeling I can't get through the next
Right.
hour, but
And
here I
now you're
am.
looking back saying, and I did it anyway. And
Yeah.
somehow I pulled some grit from somewhere. There was
Yeah,
a little bit, there was a small little speckle left because I'm
there
here now.
was.
That's very powerful. And very powerful and a really great remembering, I would say.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
thank you.
Yeah.
And I will share in those hard moments, there were many days and weeks and months where I literally was getting through the next 3 hours. All I can
Mm,
think about is the next 3 hours. Once I get there, I'll figure out the next three because even the end of the day felt like I'm not going to make it to the end of the day.
mhm, mhm,
So, when we're in that, when it feels really tough, for me
mhm.
anyway, it was definitely like I can only do the next little tiny step.
Right. Right. And so, um, Jagdeep, I'm really curious. I mean, we've talked about the theme of perfectionism, how it showed up in your parenting and the dynamics, in your encounters with your extended family members, how it showed up in your marriage or with choices you made or didn't make in life, um, and a lot of pain and turmoil that it caused on the inside, right? Where people couldn't even see. And you shared so vividly that surrender moment, where you mentioned how I just can't do it, I'm done, and all of the things that transpired from there. Is there anything else that you can share in terms of how your untold story affected your mental health specifically? So I heard you just say right now, it got to the point where you had to chunk your day and your time into such small parts that you were looking at 3-hour intervals. So, can you describe a little bit of like what it was like to be living a life where that is the kind of chunking of time you had to do?
Absolutely. So I would wake up around 6 o'clock. Now I wake up a lot earlier, but at that point, wake up at 6 o'clock. So I had to get my kids up by 7 to get them to school. So I was like, okay, 6 to 9. Okay, I get up, I get lunches done and all of that, which just felt exhausting. Every little thing was exhausting.
Hmm.
Wake them up. They were so young, but every little thing that they would, being kids was just like, I just can't. I just can't.
Like they want to
We
be
would
fun
be,
and spontaneous, and you're like, I
yeah,
need a schedule. I only have this much capacity.
right, right.
Hmm.
And getting them to school. So we would be running to get to school. And oh, we're late. And I would
Hmm.
drop them off. I would sit in the car and I would bawl. And I'm like,
Wow.
that's it. I can't drive home. So I would
Hmm.
sit there and have a really good cry, get the energy to get home. Get home and I'm like, oh, I gotta do these dishes and I gotta this. And then I'd be like, get through to 12 o'clock. And
Hmm.
then, okay, gotta pick the kids up at 2:30. So it
Hmm.
literally was, what can I do? But mentally, it was just, now when I think about it, Salima, the
Hmm.
school bell time didn't change. When we were, a year later, when we're at school 10 minutes early and we're playing on the playground, school bell time didn't change. So these
Yeah.
were kind of my real check-ins on the school times didn't change. The
Hmm.
needs of the children didn't really change. What
Hmm.
changed was me,
Hmm.
right? But to really put it into perspective of, oh my goodness, like those 3 hours at a time were like 3 hours too many.
Right. Right. And do you remember like if there were any like competing inner thoughts that you experienced that were really unhealthy for you?
Oh my goodness, so many.
Hmm.
So many where I just not only was I beating myself up for feeling like such a failure, like, now, oh, you're a single parent, you failed your kids, you've like put your family to shame, like all of this stuff that's like, oh my goodness, so destructive.
Hmm.
The blame. It's
Hmm.
all me. It's yeah, and that was not serving me at all. If anything, it was just making me feel absolutely worse and worse and worse about myself that I'm not deserving. I've let everybody down. It's all me. Like just
Hmm.
awful.
And what limitations did you see as a result of the impact to your mental well-being? Like, what did you notice?
Well, I was just I wasn't living. I
Hmm.
was I was surviving. Like I was constantly in
Mm.
survival mode. And that's just not like my nervous system never got to calm down, but it was not really just the external things. Yes, there were external things like, things that had to be done. there was a court battle to go through, which really I just felt like if this would just go away, I'd be fine, which
Mm-hmm.
it did add a lot of added pressure.
Mm-hmm.
But then when I
But
looked
you're
at,
basically, what you're saying is like you kept focusing on external factors to change and that would fix it.
yes, yeah,
I see.
yeah.
Like the hope of external factors to sort of eliminate and then all will be good.
The hope of that, yeah. And like I say, when I look at a few years later, when I'm still having those external factors, like court dates are still coming and things are still coming, and I'm like, okay, well, hey, got to work through this. So complaining about it or getting through it, like you might as well work through what you got to work through. So looking at just myself, going, oh wow, you're the same person.
Right. Yeah. You see now you can witness your own transformation.
Absolutely.
Right. So I gotta ask, what do you like with everything that you've gone through, all your lessons and learnings on this path, and all the gratitude that you have for, the things that it has taught you along the way, what is your key message to the listeners of our show? What do you think is really important for them to know?
I definitely think that we are not in control of everything.
Hmm.
Um, when I kind of realized that, it's like such a weight off me going, okay, it's not, there is a higher power, I
Hmm.
believe. And that was it's not all me. I'm not the one controlling the world in every relationship. And
Hmm.
there is a higher power working through me. And that to me is so freeing to go, whew, okay, I can let my guard down a bit. It's not all on me. So I think that if we can just kind of remember that it's not, the world is not just on my shoulders. I am a small piece, like almost a puppet in this play, in this bigger play of life.
Hmm. So yeah, great message of um, you're not in control of everything, and the sooner that you recognize it and accept it, it can be really freeing.
Exactly. Yeah.
And yeah, you don't have to be the driving force for everything. Just be a part in the play, not the entire production. I think
Exactly.
it's important to recognize. So when you say that, that's why I kind of thought about, oh yeah, you don't have to be the entire production. But it also got me to think about how, like, you just have to sort of take responsibility for your actions, um, and be accountable, uh, to what is necessary, like to what's there. But anything beyond that is not your business.
Right.
So that's kind of the takeaway I had when I heard you talk about this. Any other message that you think is important for our listeners to know?
We all get through 100% of our days. If we're still here listening to this, we have made it through all the hard stuff and the good stuff. So definitely remembering. I mean, another thing that I think about when I'm having a hard time is I didn't come this far to only come this far. I didn't go
Mhm.
through all that hard stuff to throw it all away.
Right. I didn't come this far to throw it all away. So what what are my choices? What are my options? Or what do I need to reevaluate so I can keep going?
Yeah. And what can I control? What's a little
Yeah.
thing that I can control that I can
Yeah.
do something with rather than being overwhelmed with everything that's going on around us, which is a lot.
And that, you raise an important point, because I think sometimes people go, oh, forget it. I can't do it, because they feel there's oftentimes I see the pattern of a person feeling they're lacking control with their efforts. And so it's like,
Right.
well, I don't have any more efforts to give
Right.
because I can't seem to get the outcome I'm looking for or need. So like, that's it kind of thing,
Right.
like forget about it. Um, but I like your, um, I like how you position it and say, but what's one thing I have control over in this situation? Because that
Right.
brings yourself back into the power place.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
regaining your own power. And likely you're looking at things that you do have control over, right?
Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, so I'm curious, Jagdeep, what was game changing for you in terms of inspiration? Share with us something that's really close to you that reflects your untold story, that was game changing in your pivot. So, is there like a quote, a mantra, a book, an event, a person, a place, anything that really spoke volumes?
Yes. Oh my goodness. I actually have it as the bottom of my signature line. Wayne Dyer's quote of when we change the way we look at things, the things we look at change. I wrote that daily for a long time. And that really literally when that is what's happened. I've changed the way that I look at things, and the things that I look at have changed.
It's all about the shift in perspective, right?
It really is.
Right? By shifting 1 degree, things look different.
Yes. Yeah.
So, what's an organization, or a cause that's been helpful to you, that's been impactful to you on your journey that you would like to give a shout out to? So, something like while you were going through the thick of things, was there a resource or an organization that um, was really essential for you? Or if there wasn't at that time, is there something that you're aware of now that you feel would be really good for someone who might be struggling with the things that you have worked your way through?
Absolutely. So one of the organizations that I'm with right now is called Family Smart.
Mm-hmm.
They are support for parents and caregivers, literally in any dynamics. It's for parents and caregivers who are struggling with youth or children who have mental health and or substance use challenges, but it can show up as behaviors when they're younger.
Mm-hmm.
What I love about Family Smart is we lead with our lived experience. So when I was going through, the separation at first, and there's lots of challenges my son was having in school
Mm-hmm.
with his behaviors and things, and I kept thinking there has to be other parents who have been through this, or everybody can't be perfect but me. And I was looking for like that peer support of a parent who's been there and who's, knows what it feels like.
Right.
So Family Smart is that it's parent peer support
Mm-hmm.
for parents. And it's absolutely phenomenal. Like it's what I needed, and still do, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's still things don't go away, but it's that support for parents and caregivers. And it can just literally be that deep listening. It can be connecting you with resources. So what I find with that is a lot of times we have family and friends around who mean well, but they
Mm-hmm.
still like to tell us what we should be doing or how we should be doing it.
Mm-hmm. Like their
So this
opinions,
is, yeah, and
right?
this is kind of that safe place where you can really kind of just whatever support you need, but a lot of it is the deep listening.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then being alongside you as you connect to resources, because even connecting with services through my situation felt very exhausting. It felt like I said, the system was against me. Everything was against
Mm-hmm.
me.
Yeah.
Um,
It sounds like
yeah,
you had a balance. Well, it sounds like this would be something where you would have the balance of like connection, support, and like non-judgment.
absolutely.
And you
Yes,
can't always get that from family and friends, even when they have the best of intentions.
exactly. Yes.
Okay, so my friend Jagdeep, tell us, how can people connect with you if they would like to? What are the spaces that you live on? What platforms are you available on?
I do have a podcast, Compassion Before Judgment. I am on Instagram, Connect to Your Soul with the number two. So connect number two, your soul, and also a website. And that's where you can find me.
Amazing. I believe we've grabbed all of that information from you. We'll double check. It should be on the show notes page. That's amazing. Thank you. Jagdeep, guess what?
What?
You haven't guessed. You just dared yourself to share.
Oh, thank you, Halima.
Congrats.
Oh, thank
Yeah, you
you.
did
Thanks for
it.
having the space for me to do that. I so appreciate it.
Bold, beautiful, and brave. It was honestly such a intentional, raw conversation. There was so much. Honestly, I want to take a moment and express my gratitude for what you shared today. You really articulated so deeply and clearly the journey that you have been through with undoing perfectionism, shifting away from that parenting trap, and walking away from a life that was known to you to find your own true path. So I'm truly grateful that I have been able to hear and witness your story today. And I know it's going to benefit many listeners, and they will be able to relate and take some golden nuggets for themselves. So thank you for the deep sharing, and the conversation, and for all your daring.
Thank you. And thank you so much, Salima. This was such a nourishing and such a great conversation to just go into. So I really appreciate the work that you do. And thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. And once again, Jagdeep, thank you for being part of Dare to Share Your Untold Story and helping to be a voice in breaking down the barriers of mental stigma.
To all of our listeners, if you like what you've been hearing on this podcast and you want to be part of breaking down barriers of mental stigma, I invite you to go wherever you are listening to the episode and hit subscribe. Leave us a comment or a review of the episode and maybe how you relate to it. To learn more about what we offer, visit www.daretoheal.co. And if you are feeling ready and brave to share, please submit your story by visiting www.daretoshare.co. Thanks for joining in.